Hey everyone, Federalist Films here. This is probably going to, well, this is for sure going to be the longest video I've ever done, and hopefully it will be the longest video I ever do. Some quick explanation. Some of you may have seen the video by The Skeptical Heretic showing that Wild Bill for America is falsely claiming to be a U.S. Marshal, and you may have also seen the video by Richard Coughlin talking about his support for the talking about Wild Bill for America's support for the EDL. And how the EDL were a bunch of criminals, and also going over the information about who Wild Bill actually is. What you don't know is that basically this has been kind of planned as a three-part ponage of Wild Bill. Skeptical's game comes first, then Coughlin's, and now it's my turn. Unfortunately, what I decided to do was to watch every single video he's done in one sitting, go through them all, and attack them all in one video. Hopefully this will not have any cuts, assuming my phone doesn't ring or anything. I shouldn't have any cuts. And I'm going to go through all 53 fucking videos this man, if I can use that term, has made. I just finished watching the 53rd video. I've been doing this all day now. Luckily I didn't have anything I had to get done today. But this has been a very, very painful process. That's all I have to say. It's been a very painful process. I know most of you, in fact, I doubt anyone but Edible Napalm is probably going to watch this through to completion. But this is fine with me. At least this way I never have to acknowledge Wild Bill again, and hopefully neither will any of you. So here we go. The first video this man has done is called Sarah Palin Wives. Wild Bill basically says that if every man in America could marry a man like Sarah Palin, well, let me just list the things he says would happen in the United States. 1. Divorce lawyers would be unnecessary. 2. The crime rate would drop, would plummet to nothing, because, quote, children would be raised right. They would be taught to respect the law, honor their country, and respect their neighbors. 3. Welfare offices would close. Every able-bodied person would go to work every day. If they couldn't find a job, well, they'd just be able to make their own job because of American ingenuity. Everyone would have this ability. And, people who couldn't work wouldn't even need a welfare system or the government to take care of them because their friends, family, and churches would just pay for them all to live out of the kindness of their heart. Every single American would have that. 4. American public schools would become the best in the world because parents would make sure their kids did all their homework. And they would also make sure that teachers actually taught, as opposed to whatever it is that Wild Bill thinks they do now. He also says that gas would be $1.70 a gallon if every man in America could marry a woman like Sarah Palin. Because oil refineries, yes, oil refineries, not oil wells, but oil refineries, would supply us with fresh oil for 2,000 years. Apparently he thinks that oil refineries magically make oil, and that there's about 2,000 years of oil sitting under the 3 states he names: Alaska, Montana, and North Dakota. Now, Anwar in Alaska has about 10.3 billion barrels of oil. The U.S. uses about 20 billion barrels of oil a year. I'm not sure if anyone is seeing the problem with his 2,000-year figure of oil sitting under those 3 states alone that this guy's pulling out of his ass. I mean, if you round up, the U.S. consumes about $20 billion a year. The actual figure is like 18.9 something, but 20 billion for easy math. He claims there's enough oil under those states to last for 2,000 years. So he thinks there's slightly less than 40 trillion barrels of oil under those 3 states alone. Now, according to the Energy Information Administration, the world-proven reserves as of 2007 was something like 1.2 trillion barrels of oil. So he thinks there's almost 40 times as much oil under those 3 states than the proven world oil reserves as of 4 years ago. We're not even done with the first video. There's 52 more of these to go. 6. Terrorists and liberals would have no chance of bringing this country down, because everyone would defend our borders. And 7. Every mother would love their children like Sarah Palin does. Oh. He also asks, would you rather have your missing child found by Sarah Palin or Barney Frank? If my child is missing, I think I'd rather just have him found and brought back to me. I wouldn't really care who did it. It seems to me that he's insinuating that Barney Frank would do some inappropriate things to children, which is a kind of a common theme whenever he talks about homosexuals in his videos. So basically, the sum of that, his thesis is, if every man could marry a Sarah Palin in the United States, every social problem facing the United States would be solved. Every single one. The next video, video number 2, Supreme Court stealth agent. He's talking about Elena Kagan. He says that, she has no judicial experience, so therefore she's not qualified to be on the Supreme Court. You know what? She doesn't have any judicial experience. But, neither did William Rehnquist, nominated by Richard Nixon as an associated justice and nominated for Chief Justice by Ronald Reagan. I mean, I really wonder, does he think that Nixon and Reagan were out of line for nominating Rehnquist to the court and then the Chief of SCOTUS? I mean, where was his video about that, or more accurately, since YouTube didn't exist, his letter to the newspaper, to the editor, arguing that this was inappropriate because Rehnquist doesn't have the judicial experience necessary to sit on the Supreme Court? I've actually looked up the amount of justices lacking any judicial experience prior to being appointed to the court. 40 justices out of 112. 40 out of 112. That's slightly over 1/3 of the amount of total justices have not served on a bench before being appointed to the Supreme Court. And you know what's also really, really great here, since you want to criticize Obama for appointing a justice that had never been a judge before? Our first 3 justices of the Supreme Court, William Patterson, John Jay, and John Rutledge, had no prior experience as being a judge. They were appointed by George fucking Washington. Are you saying that George Washington was wrong for appointing 3 justices that had absolutely no experience being judges? Or does he get a pass because, he just gets a pass? 2, he says that she is a stealth candidate. I kind of wonder exactly how she was a stealth candidate when she was nominated openly by Obama. People can look up every court decision and everything she said publicly, and they know where she stands on all these issues. He doesn't cover any of her politics or why he thinks she's bad and is going to destroy America. He just asserted that she's going to destroy America and attack everything we hold dear. She's been in office for almost a year now, and it shouldn't be hard for him to actually prove where she's actually started to destroy America. Yet, he couldn't do that. He didn't name any decision of hers or anything that she said that proves that she's going to try and destroy America. And then he says that she's going to commit misconduct on the bench. But he is right on one thing. He says, Congress is going to have to get involved and stop misconduct when she's elected, or appointed to the bench, rather. Well, there actually has been some judicial misconduct from Clarence Thomas, a conservative justice on the Supreme Court. Are you going to ask for his resignation because he refused to recuse himself from cases involving people that he and his wife had made money from, people that supported organizations that he and his wife sponsor and run? I got a name for you, Bill. Abe Fortas. Look him up, and then ask yourself, why aren't you asking Clarence Thomas to resign like Abe Fortas did? On to video 3. National security versus foreign oil. He claims that liberal Democrats have sabotaged all efforts to develop America's massive resources in Alaska, Montana, and South Dakota, a common theme running through all of his videos. He says this is because the Democrats have committed treason. I am not making this up. He literally says the Democrats have committed treason, another common thread through all of his videos. And he says that Saudi oil sheikhs have been giving them campaign contributions and bribing them. Firstly, as someone who claims to be a U.S. Marshal, I would imagine that you would have some familiarity with the FEC, which bans all contributions from foreign nationals. I think you would have known this. Then he says that the Democrats are trying to force Americans to get off of oil by stopping them from using cars. And this would somehow endanger our national security. But he's saying we need to get off of foreign oil. If we stopped driving cars, we wouldn't use as much oil, and we wouldn't use as much foreign oil. So wouldn't that accomplish your goal of getting us out from underneath the Saudi, the Saudi oil sheikhs? I mean, it seems to me if we're using less oil, we're using less of their oil. I don't understand why the Saudi oil sheikhs would be supporting a party that wants us to use less oil. Wouldn't they be supporting, say, the Republicans, who think we should have all kinds of oil and all kinds of big, expensive cars that use a lot of oil? I mean, if you want America to get free of foreign oil, Bill, why aren't you supporting investment in alternative energy research, something that the Republicans have continuously sabotaged? you know, they don't support alternative energy research because they don't really apparently care about it. Why not support better fuel standards for cars so we don't have to use as much oil and we don't have to rely on these Saudi oil sheikhs and people who don't like us for our energy supply? Why not support policies like that, Bill? He then, in video number 4, called Sissy in the White House, he claims that all bad guys in the world think that Obama is weak. He says, you know, Kim Jong-il is doing bad things and threatening to use nukes. He says that Iran is pursuing nukes. And he goes off about the Mexican drug cartels killing and kidnapping American citizens. You might not have known this, but those 3 things were happening under George W. Bush as well. And a few of those things were happening before George W. Bush got in office too. Bad guys have always existed, and they've always tried to kind of fuck with the United States and the West. It's kind of a fact of life. It's not like the world was fine under George W. Bush and everyone just did everything America wanted to before those damn liberals got in office. The United States has always had enemies, and it's always had groups opposed to what the United States wants. End of story. As for the Mexican drug cartels, the only figures I found about Americans being kidnapped and killed, other than one rancher in Texas, have been Americans killed in Mexico, most of them with family on the Mexican side of the border. I agree this is a bad situation. In fact, the military says there's a pretty big risk of them becoming a failed state. That'd be pretty bad. But you say Obama hasn't done anything and doesn't care, blah, blah, blah. He has deployed a few thousand National Guard troops to the area. Maybe he should do more. I mean, what do you actually want him to do there? Do you want him to invade? Spoiler alert. Yes. You know, you should be presenting some plan of action in this video instead of presenting a plan of action like 20 videos from now. You know, it's pretty easy to criticize and it's hard to come up with an answer. And unfortunately, not all answers to a problem are good, such as, you know, your answer 20-odd videos from now. Let's see, he also says that Obama has said that America is the villain in the world. Yeah, he said America's done some bad things, because it has, but he's also talked glowingly of America and American values and how we need to be true to our values and stop supporting dictatorships and support people who want to be free across the world, you know? I would have thought you would have liked that sort of language, but apparently you don't, and you don't actually care what he says. You also claim that Obama has appeased Islam. Bill, do you not recall Bush speaking highly of moderate Islam, just like Obama saying that there was a small minority of Muslims who were carrying out these attacks and they were spitting on the name of the religion of peace, and that Islam is a peaceful religion? Are you saying that Bush was appeasing Islam as well? I don't see you really criticizing Bush. But apparently when Obama does it, it's just, you know, appeasement, right? You know, and you say, like, you know, as for, you know, we shouldn't have sissies with no military or law enforcement experience serving. I mean, what about John Adams? He served. He didn't have any military experience. He was one of our presidents. Are you really saying that unless someone has military experience in the military or law enforcement, they're sissies that can't stand up to anyone? What about FDR? He sure stood up to Mussolini, Hitler, and Hirohito, didn't he? Apparently you don't remember the Second World War that later on you talk about your father serving in. You know, and finally about a sissy in the White House. Now granted this happened, you know, only about 2 or 3 weeks after you made this video, but Obama said during the campaign, he said that he would send troops into Pakistan to kill bin Laden if we knew where he was and Pakistan couldn't deliver him to us. He was widely criticized by by Republicans and conservatives for that, because he said they were violating the territory of one of our sovereign allies. Well, guess what? He fucking did it. He killed bin Laden, and bin Laden is dead. Something you do mention bin Laden being killed later in your videos, but you never mention that fact that Obama gave the order. Give him any credit for that. And you still call him a terrorist sympathizer and an appeaser in later videos after Osama bin Laden was killed. We're only 4 videos in. Video number 5. Lawyers in Congress. Wild Bill claims that lawyers serving as lawmakers is a conflict of interest because they make their living by the law. You know, couldn't we really say the same thing about every profession? Every profession benefits or is harmed by what happens in Congress. You even list a bunch of people you think are honorable, like CEOs and people in the oil industry. How is making a fucking profit honorable? It's making a profit. There's no honor involved in that. There's no dishonor involved either. But it's an ethically neutral thing to do, is making a profit. It does matter how you make that profit, but making a profit in and of itself isn't honorable. You know who else makes profits? Drug dealers. How is what they do any different than being a lawyer? A lot of them go into Congress and they serve on committees that have to do with what they did in their with, you know, their jobs they had before they entered Congress. Then they leave Congress, and then they become lobbyists for those same companies they were regulating. This is what happens. How are lawyers special here, buddy? He also says that, you know, again, he thinks that all lawyers should be banned from serving in Congress. You know, I'm glad he thinks that Abraham Lincoln, you know, pretty much the founder of the Republican Party, should be banned because, quote, a lawyer's loyalty is always for sale. You know, he says he doesn't care about what party a lawyer belongs to. They just shouldn't be allowed to serve. So again, what about Abraham Lincoln? He never addresses that one. Video number 6. Political correctness in 1942. He spends the entire video comparing Nazis to Muslims to Nazis. He also compares Keith Ellison being sworn in on a copy of the Quran, because that's his religion, to swearing in a fucking Nazi on a copy of Mein Kampf during World War II. I don't understand how he can seriously make this comparison and then later deny that he's not a bigot and he doesn't have a phobia when he makes that sort of fucking comparison. He also declares in this video, by the way, that all Muslims are enemies of the United States and can't be trusted. What about Ali Sofan, a naturalized American citizen who is a Muslim who fucking interrogated members of Al-Qaeda? Are you calling Ali Sofan a traitor, Bill? Are you calling him a traitor? What about the 3,500 odd or more Muslims who serve in the American military? Are they all traitors? You know what, though, Bill? You know what we would have had if we had had political correctness in 1942? We wouldn't have thrown the Japanese in fucking internment camps. Don't see you mentioning that, Bill. Or maybe you approve of the internment camps like Michelle Malkin does. I'm surprised you're not mentioning these internment camps, you know, which came about because we said, fuck it, you know, fuck the squinty-eyed Japs. You can just throw them in the internment camps because they're emperor and Shinto and all of that. Don't see you opposing that. Maybe if we'd had a little bit more the political correctness you don't like, we wouldn't have thrown the Japanese in internment camps and stripped them of their property and rights. They were American citizens, Bill, just like the Muslims are today. Video number 7. Michelle Bachmann Overdrive. He says that Michelle Bachmann is smart because she likes his politics, and that's how he knows she is a smart woman. Awesome. He also says that Bachmann gets a free pass from the Wild Bill Lawyer Exclusion Act, as I've dubbed it, because he likes her. I thought all lawyers should be banned because their loyalty was for sale, Bill. Or are you saying she's just somehow special, again, because she likes your politics? He says that she doesn't make her voting decisions lightly, and that she has a solid working knowledge of the scriptures and understands why and how things work. And she thinks that evil is real and must be opposed and all of that good American value stuff. You know, it's funny because you say she votes based on principle. Then tell me, since she's opposed to big government programs and government handouts, why did she take $250,000 in welfare to help her family-owned fucking farm? And why isn't she calling out her husband accepting $137,000 from Medicaid? More importantly, why aren't you calling her out on that and telling her that she should stick by her guns and give back all that money to the American taxpayer that she got from big government handing it out to her, but she didn't do a single fucking day's work to get that money? You know what? And you say that if you don't like Bachmann and what she stands for, you don't like America. And I just have to wonder, when the fuck did you get to define what supporting America means? When did you get to make that decision? A lot of people love this country. A lot of those people disagree with your politics. That doesn't mean they're anti-American, and it doesn't mean they hate this fucking country. And it's rather insulting that you would say that. The 8th video is the Islamic Rage Machine. He says that basically liberals want to appease the offended Muslims, and sissies worry themselves about how we can make Muslims like us. He also says that Muslims turn their rage on and off like a light switch, and that it's all fake. So basically, they're robots without real emotions. He claims that all of this rage and all of the protests are all planned and directed by someone, and they're all fake. They actually have no outrage whatsoever. And then he says that we're trying to give the Muslims everything they demand. You know, apparently like occupying Afghanistan and Iraq, 2 things I actually agree with. You know, the drone strikes in Pakistan and Yemen, 2 other things I agree with. targeted killings of people who support Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups. Apparently, this is giving Muslims everything they want and just, appeasing them and surrendering to all of their violent demands. He says we need to start staring radical Islam in the actually, he just says Islam. We need to be staring Islam in the eye. You know what? I think we're staring radical Islam in the eye, and we're not fucking blinking, Bill. We're doing things to protect ourselves and our allies. And then he says, he says it's sissy politicians argue we need to be aware of moderate Muslim and stuff. He says that sissy politicians basically are too concerned about, oh, what are moderate Muslims going to think? Nah, 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 nah. You know what? It's not politicians thinking that. It's people in the fucking military and people who are educated in counterterrorism and counterinsurgency. Like General Petraeus. The reason why General Petraeus, before... when he was only in charge of a single province of Iraq. The reason why his province is the least violent is because he actually talked to the Muslim leaders and respected them and got them to work with him. The whole winning the hearts and minds thing, it's kind of important in a battle of ideas, Bill. Video number 9. Sarah Palin as a leader. He claims that Sarah Palin is qualified to be a leader because she was, quote, literally the president of Alaska when she was, governor of Alaska. The problem with this bill was, no, she wasn't literally the president of Alaska. She was literally the governor of Alaska. How does she have 10 times qualifications of Obama? Seriously, do you not know the difference between a governor and a president? Yeah, governors are in charge of their state, technically, but governors don't have the exact same authority as presidents do. For example, California has like a kind of a weak presidency in a lot of ways. I think New Jersey has California has a rather weak governorship in a lot of ways, and I believe New Jersey has the strongest. Governorship does not equate to presidency. They don't have to deal with the entire world. They don't have to deal with all these foreign countries and the UN and everything else, Bill. They're different jobs. And quite a few people served as president without having prior governorship experience and did a decent job of it too. And you know what? You say she's qualified to be a leader. She fucking quit partway through her term as governor. That's what America needs, a quitter, Bill. And you whined earlier about Obama not having military experience, I must have missed General Palin single-handedly taking Guadalcanal from the Japanese in World War II. All that military experience she has, huh, Bill? Video number 10. WBV Tea Party dollars. Wild Bill wants to make in this video, Wild Bill says he wants to make the Tea Party as effective as possible by copying the liberals' use of money, despite consistently bitching about how the liberals use money and they get given money and they're criminals because all they do is support special interests and take bribes from people. Yet now he's arguing that basically he wants his special interest group, the Tea Party, to engage in the same sort of behavior. He doesn't seem to realize that the Tea Party is a special interest. And he says he's going to go and put all of these bad politicians and all the evil money they take, and he's going to he basically wants all the Tea Party people to not buy products from companies that donate to all these evil Democratic politicians. He doesn't want he wants there to be a Tea Party boycott of these companies. And he says that all of these companies that donate money to these Democratic candidates are going to be listed on his website. Well, I really don't see that section on your website, Bill, and I've looked through it. Didn't see a fucking list. So where is it, Bill? Where are these lists of companies supporting these evil traitor Democrats so people know not to give money to, not to buy products from these companies? Video number 11. Islamic Mosque Terrorist Front. He says there's no person in charge of Islam, and that's a problem. There's no pope, nothing in charge of it, Of course, conveniently forgetting there's no one really in charge of Protestantism either, which I assume he is a Protestant because he disses the Catholic Church later in videos. But if there's no one in charge of Islam, then who the fuck is organizing all these protests you claim are just a way for them to fuck with us in video 8? Who's organizing this massive conspiracy to take out the West that you keep referring to in various videos? He says that every Muslim terrorist attack can be traced to a mosque. The Muslim mosque serves as a place of worship and also a military command site for recruiting, training, and sending out jihad killers. Islamic imams, as opposed to, Jewish imams, themselves say 80% of the mosques in the U.S. are under the control of radical Muslims and funded by Saudi Arabia. Where's your source for those quotes, those stats? Kind of curious there. That's another recurring theme. He never sources anything he talks about. Or what about when you said that all the Muslims admit that they want to overthrow the United States and that every Muslim in the United States has said this and, will admit this if you ask them? Where are your sources for this, Bill? Really not seen that. In fact, all the polling data I've seen seems to run contrary to that, and that most Muslim Americans seem to like and support the United States and like our freedoms and way of life. He also says the duty of every mosque is to undermine the government they are in, and thus all mosques or military outposts, and that all Muslims are guilty of treason and sedition, and that they can't hide behind the First Amendment because they're agents of a foreign power, Islam. And he says we need to investigate them all because they all give money to terrorists. How about we start investigating churches for giving funds to groups that bomb abortion clinics, Bill? Bet you'd like that, right? If we just seized all of these churches' books and made sure they're actually giving money to where they say they're giving money. Because, people do bomb abortion clinics and do try and shoot and kill abortion doctors and deliver threats. Break the law quite a bit. Guess we should start investigating that, right, Bill? Somehow I don't think you'd support that. You'd say it's a violation of the First Amendment. Right to privacy. And what about the fact that, Muslim communities in the U.S. are the primary method we've had of identifying Muslim extremists and stopping them before they do anything? I thought as a former fucking law enforcement officer like you claim to be, you would maybe educate yourself on what the Department of Justice actually says when it comes to this sort of thing. Guess what? I have, and you're fucking wrong. Video number 12, Knowing Your Enemy. Liberalism is godlessness. He says the basic foundation of liberalism is godlessness. What about Jimmy Carter? He's a fucking evangelical. There are quite a few liberal evangelicals here in the United States. You might not have heard of them because, you're kind of an ignorant jackass, but there are quite a few liberals who are Christian. In fact, most liberals are Christian. He also says that these liberal Christians aren't really Christians because they just make their own God that never disagrees with them on anything. I mean, what? Like how God always agrees with every political decision the Tea Party or social conservatives like you ever make, and how you reference God as agreeing with every political argument you make in all of your videos, and that you're always doing what God says is the good thing? It seems like you're kind of just making up this God that never disagrees with you on anything either, Bill. Pot kettle black? He also says that liberalism is a one-way ticket to hell, especially for liberal ministers and churches. So basically, liberal Christians are secret atheists who just make up this God that disagrees with them on everything, and they're all going to hell because they disagree politically with Wild Bill for America. So you hear that? If anyone is watching this and they're a Christian, if you disagree with the Tea Party, you're going to hell. Wild Bill said it, it must be true. Video 13, The Shameful Alliance of Liberals and Islam. He says that studies show there is absolutely no backlash against Muslims. What studies, Bill? What studies? Did you read any studies, or are you just making them up like you made up your background as a fucking U.S. deputy marshal? He says that this religion practices child sex, like Catholicism does. And she kind of does mention later, but just kind of skirts around it. He says that the only sure way to get into heaven is to die while murdering Jews and Christians. I'm pretty sure the majority interpretation is that the people of the book are protected peoples and not to be harmed. Just saying, you might want to actually look at the majority interpretations of these things. And he talks about stuff like Islam encouraging wife beating, etc., etc., etc. What about Christians who do the same? Or Christians who beat and kill gays or kill abortion doctors? There's horrible fucking shit in all religions. I'm not a fan of Islam. I'm not a fan of Christianity either. And when people refer to moderate Muslims, they're not defending female genital mutilation, Bill, a practice which is not mandated by the Quran. It's a cultural practice that predates Islam. In fact, Ethiopian Christians do the same thing. In fact, if you actually bothered to research this, radical Muslim groups like Al-Shabaab in Somalia have actually forbidden the practice because it's not in the Quran and they're puritanical and they try and stop everything that's not in the Quran. Bet you didn't know that one, did you? You know, and as for people explaining themselves, if they call you a bigot, you know, you say, like, people should explain themselves if they think you're a bigot. It's probably because you're a lying douchebag who never presents any fucking sources in any of the 53 fucking videos I had to watch of yours today. You know, you never present anything for any source. You never present any source for any fact or claim you make in any fucking video. That's why people think you're a bigot. And there's going to be other reasons why people think you're a bigot. Like when you repeatedly insinuate that homosexuals are child molesters, or that we should just stop all Middle Eastern men at airports and search them, and why you support racial profiling. Sounds kind of bigoted. Video 14, Islam's abuse of women. He basically talks about, you know, various Muslim countries punishing women who report rape. That's really bad. I don't like that either. You know, Islam has some pretty horrific shit in it. So does Christianity. You know, don't pretend your religion is fucking rainbows and unicorns and sunshine. I don't want Islamic law or Christian law or Jewish law or any other religious law deciding my life. All religious law is bad and inappropriate. Most of the countries you're talking about already culturally oppressed women. They're barbaric fucking monsters if they do shit like this, but it's not like without Islam suddenly there'd be a grand new age of equality and they would all love and respect women. No, it's cultural. It goes beyond just the religious stuff. You say that, you know, like, I stand against Sharia, or Sharia should not be legal in the United States. We need to make it illegal. Guess what, buddy? It already is illegal. It's called the First fucking Amendment of the Constitution. You should try reading it sometime before you try and force us all to worship Jesus like you say in later videos. He says that tolerance has its limits. I agree, which is why I don't fucking tolerate people like him who accuse entire swaths of the United States population of being traitors, or his co-religionists and friends in the Tea Party who think that homosexuality is a crime and abortion is murder, like he does. Video 15, Islamic child molesting. He says that we shouldn't allow this religion in because it makes having sex with a 9-year-old girl perfectly legal. Guess what, though? U.S. law already forbids people having sex with children, and our law trumps their religious law there. If anyone tries it, they'll get thrown in prison, and good. And then the people in prison will make sure they have a very, very horrible time. And you know what? You seem to think that having sex with children only really exists in Islamic culture. What about our own history, the West history of sex with children? You know, the first age of consent laws were passed in England around the 1200s, and it defined the age of consent as around 12 years of age. And then later it changed to about 10 or 11 in the 1500s, including England's North American colonies, by the way. 10 or 11 was appropriate. You could have sex with a 10 or 11-year-old girl. Under the Napoleonic Code, passed in the 1800s, obviously, 11 years old was as old as you needed to be before someone could have sex with you. And it varied from 10 to 12. The age of consent in the United States was about 10 to 12, depending on each state, until the late 1800s when this started to change. By the way, those early age of consent laws in England and English-controlled territories, they only applied to unmarried women. If a man married a girl, which there was no age of consent for, he could have sex with her no matter her age. So it was legal into the Christian West for quite a long time for a man to marry a girl, an underage girl, in fact, a prepubescent girl, and fuck her. The West is just as guilty of this too, buddy. And we've been doing this much more recently in our history than Muhammad has been. And you also claim that, you know, that Islam is a plan to sneak child molestation into the United States. I mean, if you know about this plan, maybe you should present it to us instead of just keeping it a little secret. Maybe you should warn us so we can do something about it. But of course, you just make this up like you do everything. Video 16, Tea Party Phobia. The first thing he does on this video is call Harry Reid a traitor to the United States. He says that basically Harry Reid, when he said the war is lost, you know, stating an opinion in full accordance with his First Amendment rights on the war in Iraq, he said that was giving aid and comfort to the enemy and therefore is treason, in comparison to Jane Fonda. He talks about like the left's hysteria and freaking out about the Tea Party and everything, which is of course something that Wild Bill for America would never engage in. He has these calm, reasoned arguments of the state of the world, by calling sitting U.S. senators and congressmen traitors and arguing that every Muslim in the country is a traitor and should be, that Middle Eastern men should be racially profiled. Because, that's perfectly logical and calm and reasonable. He also talks about, oh, these liberals need to follow the Constitution. Again, this coming from the guy who wants to start racially profiling everyone. Video number 17, Democrats and American blacks. He says that the Republican Party has always fought for equal rights for blacks against the, quote, white supremacist Democratic Party, quote, which formed the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah, people who were Democrats formed the KKK. The KKK is not a Democratic Party creation, though. Just thought you might think about that one. Something you don't seem to realize, though, is the Republicans, though, were the liberal party of the day, and the Democrats were the conservative party. This changed around the time of the Civil Rights Act. And you say the Democrats didn't do anything for civil rights. Both parties actually did quite a bit. Who integrated the armed forces? Truman. Who sent the National Guard to Little Rock, Arkansas? Eisenhower. Democrat or Republican, respectively. Johnson supported the 1964 Civil Rights Act. By the way, all those Democrats who were opposed to civil rights joined your party, and all those Republicans who supported the civil rights movement eventually were forced out and joined the Democratic Party. That's why the Republican Party is conservative today and the Democrats are liberal, because there's a swap over the Civil Rights Act. You also say that Margaret Sanger was a racist and made Planned Parenthood specifically to kill black babies, aka give black people abortions. Even if this was true, which as far as I'm aware it's not, but even if this was true, most abolitionists were racist against blacks, including Abraham Lincoln. I guess we should all collectively spit at the Lincoln Memorial or tear down Jefferson's Memorial because he owned slaves, right? It's a genetic fallacy. The Planned Parenthood is not designed to kill black children. Planned Parenthood doesn't. The primary service of Planned Parenthood isn't even abortion. It makes up a pretty decent chunk of what they do, but it's not the only thing they do, and they're not aimed at black people. You also say that the ACLU wants to tear down, attacks people with faith in God. They want to kill faith, harass, intimidate, and abuse Christians with the legal system. Bullshit. I'm gonna have a link down below to an ACLU page about some of the religious defense of religious freedom cases they've had in just the past 10 years alone. I guess those Christian kids in Floyd County High School whose 10 commandments that they kept in their personal lockers, whose 10 commandments were removed against their will, feel really hated by the ACLU lawyers who defended their right to have their own personal copies of the 10 commandments on campus in their personal lockers. I guess those evil ACLU lawyers are really attacking faith when they fought for the kids to be allowed to keep their 10 commandments, right? Video 18, ownership of Israel. He makes the argument that because Jerusalem has never been declared a capital of any modern state, except, of course, the Palestinian Authority, this means that all of Israel belongs to, and this includes Palestine, the West Bank and Gaza, belongs to the modern-day state of Israel, and all of Jerusalem belongs to Israel, regardless of the fact that quite a bit of the population are not Israeli citizens and are Muslims who live there. He also says that Israel owns all the land of Israel and Palestine because God gave it to them in the Bible. Then he says, well, if you don't care about this, he says that Jews bought all the land in the area from the Turks. Jews did buy quite a bit of land, and, they did buy a lot of land, and it is theirs by legal right. However, illegal settlements in the West Bank, which was, Palestinian territory, they weren't purchased, those illegal settlements. They were taken from Palestine, at gunpoint. They didn't buy those things at all. So sorry, Israel doesn't have a right to those illegal settlements. It has none. Full stop. He also says in this video, by the way, that the Bible is the building block of our laws, which is incorrect because English common law is. I really want him to show me the Bible verses that argue for representative government, due process of law, the tripartite system, those things, separation of powers. You know, I kind of want him to show me that, but of course he can't. Video 19 he did was saluting Birgit Gabrielle, or Gabrielle. He praises her because basically she was a Lebanese Christian, an Arab Christian, who lived in Lebanon and was forced out with her family at a young age due to the basically civil war and the conflict that was going on there, which she and he blame entirely on Islam, conveniently forgetting the fact that the Christians, the Druze, and other groups, including Muslims, committed terrorist acts and atrocities in Lebanon. Every group there has their hands dirty in some ways. So it was a fucking chaotic, evil time. She also claims, the person that he is supporting here, by the way, claims that there are, quote, tens of thousands of Islamic militants in the U.S., claims that Muslims can't serve loyally in the military, thinks that Muslim student groups in the United States should be banned because they are planning to conduct a stealth jihad, you know, of course, going against the, you know, right to free assembly and all that in the First Amendment, because fuck the Constitution, am I right, Bill? Thinks that Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Hezbollah, and so forth actively support President Obama because he's a secret Muslim, and that pro-democracy protests in the Middle East are just trying to establish a Muslim caliphate and are actually just a bunch of terrorists and radicals. And don't actually want democracy. This is the person that he spends this entire video supporting. Not much more I can say, really, than that. Video 20. Yay. Barbarians versus the Constitution. Part of this video I actually agree with. He says that Terry Jones has a right to burn a Quran. True. That is true. He does have a right to burn a Quran. And he says, you know, well, liberals don't care about Muslims actually burning people, which, you know, I disagree with. I think that burning someone is bad, Bill. Don't really think anyone's going to say that burning someone alive is a good thing or a neutral thing. I'm pretty sure there's going to be universal condemnation of someone being burned alive, Bill. And he says, like, what did Jones do wrong? He violated no laws and harmed no person. So why were people criticizing him and yelling at him? Well, compare this to you calling Harry Reid a traitor in your video Tea Party Phobia. You say the Democratic Party is entirely guilty of treason in national security versus foreign oil, and that all Muslims are traitors in Islamic Mosque Terrorist Front. They've not committed crimes either, yet you still attack them and call them traitors and accuse them of illegal acts and say they shouldn't talk or do all these things that they're not really doing. You know, so pot kettle black there again, Bill. And then he says, you know, he takes this very firm stand against, you know, Islam interfering with our private lives. He says, since when does Islam tell us what we can and cannot do in our own homes? And my question to you, Bill, would be, since when can Christianity tell us what we can and cannot do in our own homes? Since when can the Tea Party and conservatives like you tell us what we can and cannot do in our own homes? You're against gay marriage. I assume you're against porn. You keep talking about all this sexual immorality. You hate drugs and don't think they should be allowed. So apparently you think you can tell people what they can and cannot do in their own homes. It's just wrong when Muslims do it. And now, time for one of my favorite videos she made. This video is called Beating Racism Tea Party Style. WildBillForAmerica has declared Martin Luther King Jr., quote, a hero of the Tea Party, and he says that the Tea Party is basically the embodiment of what Martin Luther King Jr. stood for, and that they're the ones who are, you know, fighting racism. All the liberals are just a bunch of racist, evil bastards. Really, Bill. So the Tea Party stands for, you know, the Tea Party represents what Martin Luther King Jr. stood for. You do know that Martin Luther King Jr. called the U.S. government the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, and said the United States was going to colonize Vietnam and was opposed to the Vietnam War. That in one of your later videos you fucking supported, or you say you support. Here's a quote where he talked about Vietnam, by the way, Bill, because unlike you, I've actually read stuff that Martin Luther King Jr. has said and written. I am convinced that if we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. A true revolution of values will soon cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our past and present policies. On the one hand, we are called to play the Good Samaritan on life's roadside, but that will be only an initial act. One day we must come to see that the whole Jericho road must be transformed so that men and women will not be constantly beaten and robbed as they make their journey on life's highway. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. A true revolution of values will soon look uneasily on the glaring contrast of poverty and wealth. With righteous indignation, it will look across the seas and see individual capitalists of the West investing huge sums of money in Asia, Africa, and South America, only to take the profits out with no concern for the social betterment of those countries and say, this is not just. It will look on our alliance with the landed gentry of South America and say, this is not just. The Western arrogance of feeling that it is everything to teach others and nothing to learn from them is not just. And what about a support and organization of the Poor People's Campaign, which asked for $30 billion from the federal government to help poor people, Bill? He wanted to force the government to stop funding the Vietnam War and abolish poverty. Yet it sounds like he was a small government, pro-military, conservative, just like you, Bill. Seems that way, right? Video number 22, free speech war. You know, I actually agree with what he says, at least in part, with free speech here. You know, I guess, you know, broken clock syndrome. You know, people should be allowed to protest wherever they want. He talks about Terry Jones not being allowed to protest in Dearborn, Michigan, something I disagree with. He should have been allowed to protest where he wanted to, and he shouldn't have been denied a permit or charge these exorbitant fees to have his little rally there. I actually agree with that, Bill. I don't think that was proper. I don't think that Dearborn, Michigan was in the right there. I actually agree with you on that. However, I do disagree with you when you say that we're going to have a street war with Islam unless we can beat them politically, even though we already have beaten them politically because Sharia law is unconstitutional and can never be passed. He then asks if Sharia has replaced the oath of office and acts somehow as if Sharia can replace the law of the land. I'd like to see them try to do this, Bill. I'm pretty sure that the circuit courts and the Supreme Court would strike that down. Even if they are controlled by liberal Democrat traitors like you seem to think they are. Video number 23, Death to America. Question mark at the end, by the way. He's not saying death to America. He says that Islamic violence killed 270 million people. And talks about the legacy of Islamic violence. Yep, pretty violent religion. So is Christianity. You know, what's the legacy of Christian violence? What's the legacy of Western violence or American violence? We've all killed quite a bit of people, Bill. No one's innocent in this world. All of our ancestors, all of our co-nationalists, co-religionists, whatever, have all killed a shitload of people. It's not a good thing. It's just a fact of life. Just a fucking fact of life. He also says that Obama doesn't care about American citizens. This video is kind of amusing because he basically says Obama doesn't care about American citizens because he's not doing anything really to fight terrorism and all that other stuff. You know, this is amusing because this is uploaded about 8 days before we killed Osama bin Laden, so I guess he does care about American citizens by going after the leader of Al-Qaeda, something that Bill doesn't actually kind of mention later on. He also asks that, you know, why are we sending countries money? You know, like these countries where people can say death to America and stuff. Bill, the alternative is worse, quite frankly, and Republicans have done it too. Republicans have sent money to all these countries too. President Bush drastically increased the amount of aid we give to Pakistan. What about Reagan supporting the Mujahideen in Afghanistan and funding Pakistan and the ISI during their war with the Soviets? We sure funded people who were saying death to America at one point, weren't we? What about selling weapons to Iran? What about selling chemical weapons to Iraq? All under the Reagan administration. You know, even the military thinks we need to give more money in foreign aid and reconstruction, Bill. It's not just a bunch of like liberal sissies thinking this. It's people who actually think about how are we going to stop this wave of violence? How are we actually going to address this? And they think we need more money for aid and reconstruction. So I guess you disagree with the military and the Pentagon. Okay, video number 24. Not even halfway done yet. The Wimpy Dance. He's complaining, you know, basically saying that the GOP isn't strong enough, it's caved to the liberals and everything. I was stunned when he said this. They haven't compromised on anything. They have not compromised on anything with the Democrats. They're running the table. They've gotten their way on everything they fought for. Remember how they prevented the Bush tax cuts from being repealed, including on the highest 1% of Americans? Governance is about compromise, Bill. It's not about shoving your views down the throats of everyone else. What they want be damned. People like you on both sides of the aisle are killing this country. Compromise is essential to make America work. The problem with the American political system is not liberals. It's the fact that neither side has been able to compromise and act like fucking adults. By the way, he praises Trump and is all in favor of how Trump is calling out Obama and like taking Obama to task on things. You know, basically the only thing Trump really did was say that he didn't think Obama was born in the United States. So I guess you might be a birther, which would make sense from your other fucking political beliefs. By the way, how'd that work out for Trump? You know, while you and Trump have been sitting there just whining and bitching and, you know, calling for Obama's log for a birth certificate, Obama was out there killing Osama bin Laden. You might want to think on that when you start talking about all these weak people in the White House. Video 25, spending cuts Wild Bill style. He says that, the first thing he leads off with is he says that nobody respects the timid, you know, except for his God, you know, who says in Psalm 37:11, "But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace." And, you know, Jesus, who he also claims to worship, when he said in Matthew 5:5, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Apparently, this is something that Wild Bill doesn't think about. Fuck the timid. No one really cares about the timid and the meek. They're a bunch of losers, right? He also says, then he starts talking about his plans for spending cuts. And the first thing he recommends, he says, quote, "Shut up about the numbers." He doesn't want facts. He doesn't want to know about the numbers. He doesn't want to know how much shit actually costs when they're talking about cutting things. He says he literally says he doesn't want any numbers, and he thinks that they should just go up there with a list of these unconstitutional departments like the EPA and the National Endowment for the Arts and just say they're going to cut them, say we're going to cut them, and all these Americans would just cheer for that. You know, I kind of thought Bill wanted to actually cut spending, not just chop off less than 0.5% of the budget. The National Endowment of the Arts has like no money. It's not, if you cut it, nothing's going to change with the budget. Cutting the EPA won't really affect the budget that much either. I thought you were actually in favor of fixing the problem. That's fucking entitlements, Bill. Maybe you should be talking about entitlements instead of the discretionary spending. Jesus Christ, you are a fucking idiot. You can't even get your own fucking conservative budgetary logic right. You know, you can't even talk about the fucking entitlement programs. And then he says, you know what, if you try all this and you fail, it doesn't matter if they beat you. It doesn't matter if the Democrats win and you can't cut a single penny from the budget. Because apparently compromising and maybe accomplishing some good and doing something to help fix the budget is worse than failing absolutely and leaving the budget the way it is now and getting voted out of office. So apparently, to Bill, absolute failure is better than compromise. And then he says, by the way, that politicians make up numbers on the fly. Apparently, no, Bill doesn't seem to realize that he's made up all these unsourced claims about Muslims, and, you know, where money goes in all these videos, in the previous 24 videos at this point. Doesn't seem to remember his totally batshit insane made-up number about the 40-odd trillion barrels of oil under Alaska, North Dakota, and Montana. Apparently, Bill doesn't remember any of this. The last 24 videos never happened. It's been an extremely long day. The 24 previous fucking videos this asshole made, it just never happened. It never happened. He doesn't seem to even know what he's talking about. He doesn't remember the own things he said in these videos. But don't worry, Bill. That's why I'm here, to remind you of things you said in videos. Video 26. Forget whales, save the rich. He thinks we don't need to save the whales, but we need to save all the rich people, because they're apparently in such dire straits now. He says that, quote, keeping Americans at each other's throats is a despicable tactic that we need to stop. And apparently then he says that the Democrats like to talk about this, quote, mysterious faceless group they call the rich, end quote. And that's all despicable and evil. They shouldn't do that. You know, you can kind of compare this, Bill, to some of the stuff that you say, like your mysterious faceless group of the Muslims and the liberals. who you claim are working together to destroy America, and that the liberals are traitors. Apparently you don't seem to remember your faceless groups and you trying to divide America and put Americans at each other's throats. Apparently you don't remember that, Bill. Apparently you don't seem to remember things you fucking say. Then he goes on to say he doesn't like class warfare. Well, neither do I, Bill. Neither do I. I don't think anyone really likes class warfare. Oh, by the way, this is a good thing he says. He says that everything we like in life, everything we like in the United States was brought to us all, every single thing, by men and women of business, not the government. Things like satellites, the internet, computers, jet engines. All, every advance that came about due to military R&D, government contracts, all of these things apparently never happened to Bill. Which is funny, because he actually kind of talks about computers as something that private businessmen invented, even though they were created for the war effort and all this other stuff. None of that fucking matters. Nothing that NASA's ever come up with fucking matters. Am I right, Bill? Satellites, fuck them. Who needs them, right? And then there's video 27, EnviroNuts. He says that our ecosystems aren't fragile and basically they have balls, is how he puts it. And that we are not a threat to life. We are not a threat to life. We are doing no harm to the environment. He laughed at the oil spill in the Gulf, and he thinks there was absolutely no damage from the oil spill. He claims that the environment was not harmed at all due to the Gulf oil spill. Not at all. He says that after they capped it, that all the oil was just gone in a few weeks, and there's absolutely no problem. No problem in the Gulf. None. None whatsoever. And then he asks, why people listen to environmentalists. Quick answer, Bill, because they're pretty much fucking right. Maybe if you paid attention, you know about basically the trash continent in the Pacific Ocean and how close we're coming to losing all of our fishing industries because of overfishing. Maybe if you actually paid attention to environmentalists or biologists and scientists and all these people who talk about these things that you're too stupid to understand, you would actually know that there are real problems here and we actually are doing serious harm to our environment. And maybe if you actually care to listen to the military and the intelligence agencies you claim to respect so much, you know that they're very worried about things like climate change because they think there's going to be another war for resources like, say, water or food, and that this can destabilize quite a bit of the world, and it's something the United States and our security establishment is going to have to deal with. But then again, fuck it, you don't really care. And then, by the way, he compares environmentalists to terrorists. He says, quote, they're cut from the same cloth. Because of the end of An Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore detonates his suicide vest and kills everyone in the fucking room. Video 28. Video 28. The border. Wild Bill style. This is a great one, folks. He says that terrorists are free to walk into our country on the border. I want him to name one terrorist who's done that. As far as I'm aware, no one has. And, there's something I don't think you kind of understand about this. Like, when we talk about illegal migration, the reason why so many illegal immigrants have stayed on this side of the border is because of how hard it is to actually cross under the border now. It's kind of difficult, which is why a lot of them stay there. I just kind of want to bring that up because I know you're against legal immigration and all that. Bill also thinks that Obama is unintentionally, he gives him the benefit of the doubt and says he doesn't think that Obama's trying to help the terrorists and the drug cartels by not protecting the border, but that's what he's in effect doing. Before I go on to his plan to address the border situation, I want to point out the fact that most of the drug cartels' guns come from the United States and they're legally purchased. So I wonder, are people like Bill, the NRA, and gun dealers at gun shows unintentionally arming the drug cartels in their war with the Mexican government and the people of Mexico? Maybe if we had stricter gun laws and the drug cartels wouldn't have the weapons necessary to fight their damn drug war. But then again, lifelong NRA members like Wild Bill are opposed to stopping the gun show loophole. He also thinks, okay, now here's his plan, by the way. 1, pull all of our troops out of Afghanistan and send them to the Mexican border, because we should put 100,000 armed men on the Mexican border to defend it, because that's what we need right now. Oh, by the way, he says if the Taliban take over Afghanistan, they're not going to attack the United States. They're going to end up attacking Europe first. So, and he says, you know, fuck it, let the Europeans deal with it. So basically, if the Taliban attacks our allies in Europe, the Wild Bill defense plan would tell them to go fuck themselves and deal with it on their own. Glad to see you really care about our allies there, Bill. Part number 2, build the huge wall from the Pacific Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico. He wants a double wall, 50 feet high, with a 300-yard kill zone between them. And then he says, how are we going to pay for this? Well, we're going to make Mexico pay for it as part of their reparations for harming our national security. So apparently we're just going to take money from Mexico at gunpoint. That's going to go over so well. It gets better. It gets better. He says basically that we should authorize all military action against anyone trying to cross the border illegally, giving the military, including the Air Force, full power to attack anyone trying to cross the border. So that random guy just looking for work in a fucking field, he literally wants the army just to shoot him in the kill zone. No questions asked. Then he wants Congress to officially declare war against the Mexican drug cartels, because this is as big of an issue as the War of 1812, the Mexican-American War, the Spanish-American War, World War I and World War II, the 5 perfect wars. We need to add the Mexican drug cartels to that list. Despite the fact we didn't declare war in Vietnam, Korea, either time in Iraq, in Afghanistan, against the Taliban, against Al-Qaeda, against any terrorist group, we need to do it against the Mexican drug cartels, because that is the real threat. The next video, gelding liberals. He says that liberalism is a symptom of diminished manhood, and thus that cutting off liberals' testicles wouldn't solve the problem of liberalism, because they wouldn't have enough testosterone, and they're already lacking it. So cutting their testicles off would be counterproductive. Thanks, Bill. I'm sure the Democrats are happy to hear you're going to let them keep their balls. He says stuff like liberals need to give up their Whoopi Goldberg pinups. I mean, and he says stuff like they need to get rid of all their thongs and wear briefs and boxers and get rid of all their sandals and wear boots like a man. Seriously, why don't you just say the liberals are all a bunch of faggots or something? I mean, that's basically the point of this video. They're all a bunch of girly men who are browbeat by their wives, you know, and all they like is all this effeminate stuff, and they're not man enough to do, you know, to take care of America, and that's why they're liberals, because they're not men. They're not real men. Why don't you just skip it all, just call them gay? It's basically the point of your video. You know, say they need to stop caring about women things like gay rights and abortion rights. You say, it's just pathetic. And then you end with, you know, people need to support themselves without any government handouts. Again, are you going to criticize all those farm owners who get money from the government, Bill? Like Michelle Bachmann, is she not a real conservative anymore? Are you going to take back your glowing praise for her that you gave in video number 7? I hate this guy so much. Let's see, where are we at now? Video 30, the drug war, Wild Bill style. He says the drug war is a myth because Congress hasn't done anything, you know, despite all the people we have in prison and all the money we spend on the DEA and everything else. The drug war is actually a myth. He says, quote, we should address the demand by making the penalty serious enough so doing drugs is not worth the risk. He thinks the problem with the drug war is we just don't have high enough penalties. He says, quote, build special narcotics prisons because criminals are not ill people who need treatment, but jackasses who need punishment. So apparently if you're addicted to drugs, you're just a jackass and you're not ill and you don't need any treatment whatsoever. He thinks that drug trafficking should be a capital offense like in Singapore because that would stop drug trafficking. And then he thinks that there should be special narcotics courts where anyone convicted of possession of any drug should be sentenced to hard time for a long time, like breaking rocks for decades apparently, unless they renounce their citizenship and then get kicked out of the United States. Yes, so if you get caught possessing weed or anything else, you should go break rocks in a prison for fucking decades and ruin your life unless you voluntarily give up your citizenship and then you can leave the country and go somewhere else. Yay. But you know, really, why stop at drugs, Bill? You keep bringing up things like all the drug murders, robberies, overdoses, etc., all the people who died because of drugs. What about all the cancer and liver cirrhosis deaths? What about all the people who, what about all the alcoholics who've beaten their wives or run over people in their fucking cars or done horrible things under the influence? What about people dying from secondhand smoke, Bill? Should we ban those too? Because banning alcohol worked so well the first time around. Because seriously, I mean, why not just make all drug possession a capital crime? If you want to make the penalties harsh enough to make it not worth it, fuck it. Let's make all crime punishable by execution bill, such as falsely claiming to be a former U.S. Marshal in order to solicit donations through your website. All crime. Why not just make all crime not worth it by just killing anyone who commits a crime? I think that would stop it. I think that would stop crime dead in its tracks, according to your logic. Let's see. The 31st video is Acquired Intelligence Deficiency Syndrome. Firstly, I just have to say that comparing political correctness to AIDS is fucking disgusting. That's just fucked up. I didn't even want to address this video just because of that. But I actually have to, I guess, address other things he says. He argues in this video that we should racially profile people, specifically Middle Eastern men. He says that political correctness makes it so we can't defend against, quote, barbarian Islam. Because, of course, PC hippie liberal Obama greenlit a mission that successfully killed bin Laden 6 days before this video was uploaded. Any mention of Obama greenlighting this mission? Nope. Spoiler alert, no mention of this anywhere else in any of his videos. Apparently, the government can't defend us from terrorists, he claims, except in the cases that Bill wants to ignore, like, again, Osama bin Laden. He even says that Obama can't, quote, speak the name of the problem, radical Islam, or come up with, quote, a plan to do something about it, except for, again, killing bin Laden, expanding our use of drones and targeted killings to take out Al-Qaeda and Taliban members, deploying more troops to Afghanistan in a surge. Apparently he can't do anything. He also says that political correctness has somehow attacked freedom of speech. He seems to think that people who speak out against what he believes are somehow assaulting freedom of speech. Bill, you are free to say stupid shit. We're free to call you on it. Welcome to America, asshole. Isn't it great? Video 32, Mexican lunacy. Firstly, he says in the very beginning of the video that Obama is a tyrant. He says that, quote, Obama stands with the criminals and, quote, the Islamic barbarians are setting up shop in Mexico and are being aided by the drug cartels. He claims that the CIA has said that Hezbollah is, quote, better organized and more dangerous than Al-Qaeda, and it has a base in Durango. By the way, this story I looked for tirelessly. It came from a local ABC News report in San Diego, Channel 10. It's from a, quote-unquote, former intelligence agent who's not named, his agency is not named, and there's no corroborating facts or information provided. He's not identified, neither is the agency he claimed to work for. It's a local news report. I've noticed that a few people have left multiple comments on that video asking for your sources on this, and you refuse to back them up. There's no evidence for anything you said other than that one news report, and then dozens and dozens and dozens of Islamophobic or Tea Party blogs referencing that news report. That's the only thing there is on this. He also says that Obama makes decisions only based on what will be popular, which of course explains him keeping troops in Afghanistan, the surge in Afghanistan, keeping troops in Iraq, the surge in Afghanistan, not trying to prosecute Bush and people for, the whole torture thing. All of these decisions were, of course, incredibly popular with the American people and his base. Incredibly popular. And this is probably the most ironic thing he says. He says that Obama thinks that all Mexicans support criminals. And then he says, quote, I've met 1 million Hispanics in my law enforcement career, and they are decent, honorable Americans who love this country. Just because a few radicals march in the streets with Mexican flags doesn't mean you should stereotype them all. That is just racist. You mean like you stereotype Muslims? And Middle Eastern men, by your own admission, who you say should be racially profiled at airports? Because they could all be terrorists and they all are terrorists and traitors? I don't see how you can try and say that Obama is somehow a racist for thinking that, as far as I'm aware, he doesn't think this at all, but you are accusing him of thinking that all Mexicans support criminals. He's a racist because he thinks a few radicals means they all support this, while completely ignoring the fact you do the same fucking thing when it comes to Muslims. Or liberals, who you think are all traitors, because a few wear Che Guevara t-shirts, as you mentioned later in the... And then he says there's only one group capable of stopping terrorists, conservative Americans, which of course is why Bush managed to find and kill bin Laden. Am I right, Bill? Now, video 33, sabotaging America. He says that the President of the United States and all the Democrats are sabotaging America. hence the title of the video. He says that recent studies show that Alaska has more oil than all the Middle Eastern countries combined. Add that to the oil in Montana and North Dakota, and we have enough oil to supply not only ourselves, but the entire world for 2,000 years, end quote. I know I addressed this later, but then he was just, I addressed this earlier rather, but then he was just saying that there was enough oil for America for 2,000 years. Now it's the entire world. That those 3 states have enough oil for the entire world for 2,000 years. What fucking studies have shown this, Bill? What studies? Name one study, Bill. You don't fucking provide any evidence. People ask you for it in the video, which of course you don't respond to any comments, so you never actually provide any fucking evidence for this claim. I seem to recall you complaining about people making up numbers in video 25. Doing it right here, 7 videos later. Oh yeah, and of course then there's the obligatory all Democrats are criminals at the end of the video. I fucking hate this guy. Seriously. Like, this guy makes Mystical Forest look like a fucking genius. I have never been so disgusted and so just annoyed at someone being this stupid. I'm starting to miss Ujama Flipper videos. I'm seriously starting to miss Ujama Flipper videos while going through all of his videos and taking these notes. I just hope you realize this. It's this bad. His videos are really this bad. I'm not exaggerating. Go watch them. They are this bad. They are this intolerable. Then there's video 34, America's Stupidest Family. Basically, he's trying to compare the United States government to a family and trying to extrapolate family economics to government economics, which doesn't quite work. He says that we shouldn't raise the debt ceiling, by the way. He says that we shouldn't raise the debt ceiling, and it's criminal if we do it. Bad. Obama's a criminal, and the Democrats are criminals if they try and do it, and if Republicans try, like Boehner, they're criminals. Now, all I have to say about that, really, is the Wall Street Journal said that failing to raise a debt ceiling, even for just 95 days, would wipe out the entire economic growth experience in 2011. Just saying. And by the way, your hero, Ronald Reagan, in 1983, quote, "The full consequences of a default, or even the serious prospect of default, by the United States are impossible to predict and awesome to contemplate. Denigration of the full faith and credit of the United States would have substantial effects on the domestic financial markets and the value of the dollar at exchange markets. The nation can ill afford to allow such a result. The risks, the costs, the disruptions, and the incalculable damage lead me to but one conclusion. The Senate must pass this legislation before the Congress adjourns." I guess Ronald Reagan is a liberal Democrat, a fool, and driving America to destruction under your definition of what, passing the debt ceiling would do, right? I guess you were against what Reagan did in the 1980s, raising the debt ceiling. Was it bad, or is it okay because Reagan did it? There's that joke that that Reagan would be too liberal for the Republicans and the Tea Party today. It's kind of true, and that's fucking sad. Now there's video 35, The Israeli Heart. He tells a story about a retarded Palestinian kid, his words, a Palestinian kid who was retarded in some manner, that was basically beaten and forced to wear a suicide vest and approach an Israeli checkpoint with a detonator. And they all saw the kid, and the jacket came open, they saw the suicide vest, and they all told the kid to stop, and he did, and an Israeli guy managed to run out there and disarm the bomb and save the kid, and everything was happy. If that's a true story, that soldier's a hero, and I'm glad for the kid. No problems with that. That's all I really have to say about that part of the video. But then he says, talks about, well, if a Palestinian's injured, he's not sent to a Hamas hospital, he's sent to the Israeli medical system, which he says is the best medical treatment in the world. I'm kind of curious, by the way, why you would call a universal healthcare system the best in the world, since you're opposed to universal healthcare, and you think it would absolutely destroy this nation, like it's destroyed every other nation that's had it, except for apparently Israel. I thought you Tea Partiers thought universal healthcare was bad, but apparently Israel gets a pass on this because they're America's strongest ally, which of course somehow makes their universal healthcare system magically different than everyone else's. I don't have a problem with shooting terrorists. I don't think many liberals do. And I don't think many conservatives do. I think it's pretty much accepted that if a terrorist is trying to kill someone, it's okay to shoot and kill them. Don't really have a problem with that. But what does that Palestinian kid at the checkpoint with the Israelis have to do with forcing people out of their homes in the West Bank? What does that have to do with that? And what does forcing people out of their homes in the West Bank have to do with compassion? Because you claim the Israelis are just all compassionate all the time. I don't understand that, Bill. But I guess all the Palestinians are just terrorists in your mind, right? Video 36. No fear. This one is a short one. He says that we should show no fear. Islam is a predator. Fear of Islam is what's driving the media in America. He basically says that we need to stop being afraid of Islam, blah, 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 blah. Conveniently not remembering that he thinks that we should build a giant wall of the kill zone because of the possibility of Muslim terrorists infiltrating us, that we should deploy over 100,000 troops to the border and kill anyone who tries to cross because of the Muslim terrorists he's afraid of, investigate and shut down all the mosques, and treat every Muslim like a traitor and a secret terrorist because he's afraid of radical Islam. You know, it wasn't just the media that was opposed to Terry Jones. He just says it was the media that was opposed to Terry Jones, by the way. And they're just opposed because they don't want to offend Muslims and they're just afraid. It was the national security establishment who didn't want Terry Jones to do what he did. Are you calling Secretary Gates a coward, Bill? What about people like General Petraeus who would say this is a bad thing? Are they cowards, Bill? I really want you to get on record with calling them cowards. Then there's Video 37, Waterboarding for Dummies. He talks about, you know, the idea that apparently some of the information that led to Osama bin Laden's death, which of course he doesn't say that Obama ordered the hit again, but he says that some of this information may have come from waterboarding and that KSM said it worked. I don't know. I can't argue that, so I'm not going to try. I've heard that it's worked from people who are involved in the program, and I've heard it hasn't worked from people who know about the program. I don't know. Military interrogators seem to say that it's a bad program and we shouldn't use it, and it harms the war effort. He also claims that waterboarding was stopped by liberals. It was stopped in 2003. The last person was waterboarded in March of 2003, before the Iraq War started. By the way, who was it that ended the waterboarding and the other EIT program stuff? General Michael Hayden, after being appointed to the DCIA by Bush. Are you saying that they are liberals and cowards and just sissies that don't know how to fight the war on terror because they ended waterboarding? Just asking, Bill. Just asking. He also says that we lost Vietnam because we were too soft on our enemies. For fuck's sake, actually read about the Vietnam War. Maybe you claim to have fought in it. I don't know. But if you actually read any of the reports on the counterinsurgency stuff, we started actually doing rather well. We started using cords. You know, to stay in the Vietnamese village and help them build up their villages and stuff. It wasn't being too soft that cost us the war. It was actually being too hard on the random villagers for far too long and not actually protecting and supporting them. Not that you would care, though. And he says we need to get rid of these sissy anti-terror policies. You know, I've actually read reports from DOD and DOJ on this sort of thing, as well as stuff from people like David Kilcullen. You may have heard, well, actually, you probably haven't heard of him. What you say runs contrary to every single thing I have read about counterterrorism and counterinsurgency. Your kill them all and let God sort them out sort of approach has failed every time it's been tried. It does not work. Video 38, Irina. It's a video about Irina Sendler, who was a hero, basically a Polish woman, a nurse, who rescued about 2,000 to 2,500 Jewish babies during the Holocaust. She smuggled them out. Eventually, she was caught, and they basically broke her bones and broke her arms and legs and left her to die in the woods. But she managed to get to safety and live. She actually died about 3 years ago. He uses her memory as an excuse to insult Al Gore because Al Gore won the Peace Prize over her. And then says that Al Gore should be a man and give her family the money. Basically, he's using her heroic actions and tragedy for her being attacked in the Holocaust to diss Al Gore. Like, okay, I'm not all that big a fan of stuff that Al Gore said and done, but that's pretty fucking low. And then he says Al Gore's made a good business off of scaring people. Bill, so have you. You're asking for donations when all you're doing is talking about street wars with Muslims and how they're all traitors trying to kill us all. We need to basically be prepared for them and their fucking fifth column Democratic allies to wipe us all out and turn America into a tyrannical dictatorship. You're trying to scare people too, Bill, just like the rest of the Tea Party. Oh, at the beginning of the video, by the way, he says the Nazis made their alliance with Islam to kill the Jews. Bill, you might not be aware of this, but anti-Semitism has a pretty long history in Europe. Doesn't have much to do with Islam. Anti-Semitism is a theme that has existed in both Western and Muslim societies for quite a while. A lot of Christians didn't like the Jews, and a lot of Christians still don't like the Jews. This is bad. Doesn't mean there was a lot that the Nazis' hatred of the Jews didn't come from Muslims. It came from pre-existing anti-Semitic sentiment that was got really, really bad towards the 1870s. It got progressively worse throughout the early 20th century. Video 39, Adable talking. He says that flowery rhetoric is not going to save this nation's problems. Something I actually agree with, even though all he does is use rhetoric in all of his videos and rarely presents any actual facts. Actually, scratch that, never presents any actual facts. He says that in this video that basically here we go. Yeah, he says that faith in God is the foundation for all success. I think China's pretty successful, and they're an atheistic country, and you say they're a threat to us. They don't really seem to believe in God. Then he talks about some random story about some hippie basically talking about talking to the animals because they're all our brothers or something. Yeah, that's bullshit. But how is that different than conservatives talking to God? I mean, at least animals exist. I can go outside and see an animal. I can go buy an animal. I can't go outside and see God or buy God. Animals at least exist. Talking to them is just as stupid as talking to something that doesn't exist, Bill. Video 40. I know that was a short one. Didn't really say much other than just bullshit about some fucking animal hippie story. Now, video 40, the missing dictator. This is a great one. He says that liberals love dictators, which is rather amusing since the Democratic Party universally opposed the Soviets, and they overthrew countless regimes and installed people opposed to the Soviets, just like the Republicans did during the same time period. He says that these liberal universities celebrate Mao and Che and Stalin and Pol Pot. I went to a liberal university, and all they did was talk shit about people like Mao and Che and Stalin. Didn't really see much support for them. Did see a lot of support for people like FDR, Kennedy. Some people supported Reagan, actually. Clinton, people who actually did some stuff. Didn't see much support for dictatorships there, buddy. Oh, he then says that Obama is standing with Hitler's allies, aka Muslims who surround Israel, who want to wipe out Israel, and Obama is standing with them and attacking Israel. He says that the liberals keep championing Mao, Stalin, and so forth, but he doesn't seem to talk about conservative Republican supported dictators like Eisenhower installing the Shah, or when Richard Nixon went to China, met Mao, and then opened up relations with Mao's China. Doesn't seem to talk about any of this. All the Republican support for dictatorships. What about Reagan selling weapons to Iran? What about Reagan selling chemical weapons to Iraq and Saddam Hussein? No mention of that. No mention of Republicans supporting dictatorships. What about President Bush's support of General Musharraf? Don't see any mention of that from you. Both parties have supported dictatorships. No one's hands are clean in this one. The conservatives aren't these great, fun-loving freedom people. They support being bad, evil dictators too, buddy. He basically claims in this video that liberals love all dictators, but the only one they won't admit to loving is Hitler because Hitler was actually exposed. So if they actually admitted their secret loving of Hitler, they would just be like round up and shot basically by all good, freedom-loving people. Yeah, so apparently liberals secretly love Hitler, basically is the message of that video. Video 41, Dangerous Men. He says in this video that whenever someone asks him a direct question, he gives a direct answer, which of course is why he's never responded to comments asking for sources for all the bullshit he spreads. Where are those, why aren't you answering those questions? Those were direct. Where did you get this information? So your direct answer in that is silence? Great job there, asshole. He says the problem with Americans is that men aren't men anymore because liberals have taken away their warrior spirit given to them by God. Basically men are a bunch of sissies now, and that's the problem with America. We need dangerous men to fight off the wolves of barbarian Islam and the wolves of liberals. Not making this shit up. He then asked people to donate money to him to help him promote his videos. I found this rather amusing because, well, from where that video was shot, it looks like he has a pretty nice pool at his house or wherever that was filmed. So I'm asking why I'm kind of wondering why he's asking for donations in that. I mean, shouldn't he have the warrior spirit to fund all this shit himself instead of asking for handouts from people and taking their hard-earned money that they could give to, say, churches or poor people? Apparently Bill needs it so he can, keep his lifestyle while making these shitty fucking videos. Then there's video 42, Jihad American Style. Almost done. He says one thing I agree with here in this video, that America won't lose to terrorists, which is kind of an obvious thing because terrorists can't pose an existential threat to the United States. There's no way they can take us down. So, no one really needs to be afraid that we're going to lose that one. He then talks about how it's great that we're sending out our women in F-15s to fight the Mujahideen. That's cool. Yeah, we have women in combat now, at least in planes. Pretty soon we'll probably have them on the front lines too. It's pretty cool. What's also cool though? Now we can send our gays at them and attack them. Isn't that great, Bill, that we don't stone our gays, but we put them in F-15s and send them after terrorists? Just like you said, isn't it great that we don't put our women in burqas, but put them in F-15s and send them after terrorists? Pretty much the same thing there, Bill. Pretty much the same thing. Wonder why you don't support the first one, but you support the second one. And isn't it great? Wouldn't it be great, like you said, that we're making them run and hide from our female population that they hate so much? Wouldn't it be great if we were making them run and hide from our gay population that they and you hate so much? Like America's greatest ally, Israel, does, because gays can serve openly in the military and can have been able to for a few years at the very least. There's no problem with that in the Israeli military, but apparently America's greatest ally doesn't know what they're talking about. Just a bunch of cowards, right, Bill? Then he says something about Osama bin Laden being in a fortress in the middle of a Pakistani military center. Not quite true. He was in a guarded compound in a town near a Pakistani military center. A major one, but not in the fucking middle of it. By the way, I love how you keep avoiding mentioning the fact that Obama is the one who ordered that mission. And just keep calling him weak and saying he's a coward and doesn't want to oppose terrorism. I guess all those people just took it upon themselves to go steal a few choppers and fly over there and kick some terrorist ass. Right, Bill? And then he accuses, by the way, jihadists of donating money to Democrats to take guns away from American citizens. Bill, if you think that jihadists and terrorists are funding the Democrats, why aren't you providing information on this? If you really think that terrorists are giving money to the Democratic Party, why aren't you providing a list of people who have taken terrorist money? Why aren't you putting this on your website? I would think this would be pretty important news if we had congressmen and senators who were accepting money from our enemies, or like terrorists who want to kill us all. I'm pretty sure this would be important news that your audience may like to know about, like who specifically is taking terrorist money. But of course, you don't have any names, do you? You don't have any numbers, the numbers you hate so much, do you? Because you're making all this shit up. Then there's video 43, Battling Dr. Libby. He basically talks about some stereotypical liberal he fought with and he hates, basically. He says his school priorities are reading, writing, English, and a bunch of other stuff, but he says English about 8 times. Firstly, reading, writing, and English are kind of the same subject. Just saying. Kind of learn them all at the same time. He says that schools push sexual perversion, destroying moral standards, and teach children to be ashamed of America. And that we should just get rid of therapists in schools because they're a bunch of losers, and just hire a bunch of gym teachers to make kids strong, because if they're in shape, they won't have any sort of mental problems, and everything will be good. Then he says that the rich don't need help because they do it the American way, which of course I take it as Bill admitting that he is in favor of ending tax write-offs for the rich, which of course he opposes because, again, the rich apparently do need help. Then he says that basically welfare benefits go to keep people home, and they just sit there and whine about being poor instead of getting a job. Statistics, please. Modern welfare programs don't do that. You don't just get a check without working. And what about programs like the Earned Income Tax Credit, nominally a welfare program, or the negative income tax that famous liberal Milton Friedman hid? For those who don't know who that is, he was not liberal at all. What about programs like that Milton Friedman put forward? I mean, you keep talking about lies that get repeated often enough that they're taken to be true. Congrats, you just gave one, that everyone on welfare just sits on their ass, doesn't want to work, and is lazy. Good job, buddy. And then you say your opinions are based on rock-solid evidence, which of course is why you can never provide any evidence for what you're saying. You never source anything. You never actually quote anything. You never give any links to information. You don't do any work. You don't actually say where this information comes from. You refer to vague studies and other things. Video 44, Dirty Filthy 2012. He says that anyone who opposes the Tea Party hates America and wants to establish a, quote, totalitarian socialist country. He then talks about all kinds of alleged Acorn activity, Acorn being an organization that I wasn't exactly fond of. But the only sources I could find for the specifics that he was talking about were Tea Party blogs. I looked for news sources, couldn't find anything. The one thing he did say that there were sources for was when he accused him of setting up a child sex slavery ring. Apparently, Bill doesn't want to actually talk about the fact that the Massachusetts Attorney General, the Brooklyn DA, the California Attorney General, and the GAO said that these undercover tapes Bill referred to were heavily edited, and that there was no criminal intent or action committed by any Acorn employee or by the organization itself. And then Bill has the gall to complain about dirty politics and lying. Fuck you. Video 45. Good dogs in Islam. Rather fucking pointless video. He basically says he doesn't like Islam for one reason. Islam doesn't like dogs. Neither does traditional Judaism, but Bill doesn't care about that little tidbit. And then he says that liberals and Muslims get along because they force everyone to live like them. Really, Bill? I sure seem to see you arguing that everyone needs to follow your guidelines on sex, marriage, morality, what it means to be a true man, what it means to support the United States, etc. And if they don't like it, they should leave the fucking country and they will burn in hell. Oh, and they're traitors. Just remember, they're traitors if they don't like the Tea Party and your politics. Then there's video 46. Clobbering liberal racists. It's basically a repeat of video 21, the Martin Luther King one. He says that racism is kept alive by liberals, and only liberals, and that they're evil and wrong for declaring Martin Luther King Jr. their hero. He claims the Tea Party practices what Martin Luther King Jr. preached, except for everything Martin Luther King Jr. actually stood for. And then he says he's tired of people getting Americans at each other's throats, despite the fact he constantly insults liberals, says they're traitors, says they're criminals, says they're worthless, does the same with Muslims. Everyone who disagrees with Bill is a traitor and basically is just a loser and an idiot. Great job bringing America together there, Bill. And then he says, he's not a racist or a bigot, and he can't be because he's a Tea Partier. I want to ask, didn't you say that Middle Eastern men at airports should all be searched? Yeah, he did in video 31. Kind of makes him a bit bigoted and racist, but what do facts matter to Wild Bill? And then he has a video called Rottweiler Therapy. He tells some story about some crazy woman hopping a fence and then getting bit by a dog and she'd stop hopping the fence. And then he argues basically that this means that we should beat our children, and that would cure social ills. You know what, Bill? I was beat at school. Didn't do jack shit to me. I was also force-fed the Bible every day. And I'm definitely not your definition of a conservative. Definitely not a Christian. Guess it didn't really work with me, huh? Because I'm opposing you, moral values, and whatever the fuck it is you stand for. Then he says that stupidity should be painful. Stupidity is painful. My head hurts from watching all of your videos and now doing however long this video has been so far. Really not all that much of that video to comment on. Then there's video 48. Almost done. Hateful haters of the left. He says that liberals and Democrats want to hate anyone who disagrees with them as being filled with hate. Similarly, while Bill paints everyone who disagrees with him as a traitor, a terrorist sympathizer, a liar, a criminal, and a pedophile in some cases, and just all these sexual perverts who just are effeminate men who are gay and can't do anything. Then he says they don't dare discuss the issues honestly. Bill, I have watched every single one of your fucking videos, and you haven't given one fucking source for any point, and I have to use that word very liberally, no pun intended. You haven't given any source for anything you've said, and you're accusing liberals of not wanting to talk honestly about facts. This from the guy who says he doesn't want to hear about numbers. Then he says he doesn't think that liberals are opposed to terrorists and suicide bombers, and that they actually love suicide bombers and terrorists. And then he complains about kids being molested by liberal priests, aka Catholic priests, because it fits in with the gay lifestyle, or the liberal. Actually, no, he says it fits in with their lifestyle, their being liberal. Because the Catholic Church is so tolerant of gays and abortions and condoms, which is, of course, why they tell people in Africa that tell people in Africa who are at risk of dying of AIDS not to use condoms, which can help prevent the spread of AIDS. They are so liberal. And, of course, all liberals, their whole lifestyle revolves around fucking kids. Right, Bill? Isn't that what you're saying? That pedophilia is totally acceptable to the liberal mindset? Is that the accusation you're going to make, buddy? Then there's video 49. the bad teacher Boogie. He wants to force every teacher and student to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. You know, of course, he doesn't give a shit about freedom of speech and the First Amendment, despite claiming that all Tea Partiers want to follow and enforce the Constitution. He doesn't care. He also thinks that the God should be in all the government stuff in school classrooms, again, of course, in violation of the First Amendment. And then he says that, and then he, keeps blaming the public schools instead of focusing on the parents who are the main problem when it comes to educating children because they don't get involved or care. And then he claims that our kids in schools are taught to bow down and pray to Mecca. Haven't heard of this happening, but then again, it's a Wild Bill who doesn't make up shit and claim it comes from some source in the government. And then he says that children are to be protected from sexual perverts. He says, you know what he's talking about, because apparently homosexuals are sexual perverts preying on our children and they want to rape all our children. This is the assumption I'm getting. This is the assumption I have having watched 53 of his videos. Then there's video 50. Luckily, these next few are actually pretty short. Then there's video 50, that uncontrollable woman, about Sarah Palin. He says Sarah Palin is a shooting star. Apparently, he is not familiar with the polls. As of earlier this year, 56% unfavorable, 38% favorable ratings for Sarah Palin. More people hate her than like her. She's not popular. Americans don't like quitters. And, they like quitters even less than people who claim to be U.S. Marshals when they weren't. Sarah Palin destroyed herself. He claims that the liberal media tried to destroy Sarah Palin, but it's Sarah Palin who destroyed herself. She was unqualified. She didn't know what she was talking about. She couldn't even answer simple questions. She's a moron, which is, no wonder why you like her. And then there's video 51, which is really short. He just says that you should join him this November at the Florida Tea Party Convention in Daytona Beach. And these are the things he says in this video. Basically, we're voting on whether or not we're going to remain the best country in the world or if we're going to let the liberals destroy America because the liberals want to bring down the United States. I wish I was joking. He actually said this in the video. Then there's video 52. Coughlin covered most of this, basically his support for the EDL criminal stuff. So I don't have to, I don't really have to cover a good chunk of Salute to the EDL. But he talks about basically that they're facing an Islamic invasion of their nation. Really, I must have missed the army of the Guardians of the Islamic Revolution landing in Portsmouth while the Syrian 4th Mechanized took Liverpool. I'm pretty sure this never happened. I'm pretty sure there's no Islamic invasion. But then again, I don't apparently read the same newspapers you do. He also says that moderate Islam paves the way for radical Islam. No wonder Pat Condell likes this man. For that, I'd have to ask, Bill, you mean like how moderate Christians like you pave the way for radical Christians to execute homosexuals like they want to in Uganda? Or how moderate Christians like you pave the way for priests in the Catholic Church who have raped children? It's the same argument. It's just as stupid when it's made against you, Bill. Then he talks about how French police are too afraid to go to neighborhoods near Paris, even though there are American neighborhoods that police won't go into without quite a bit of people. And then the last thing he does in this video, he brings up the fact that his dad fought in World War II with the British side by side, which is why he's fighting side by side with the EDL. You know what? My great-grandfather fought with the Brits too in World War II. You know who else fought for the Brits? Muslims, quite a bit of them. You know who fought for the French? Quite a bit of Muslims from their imperial holdings. Don't wave the fucking flag at me, Bill. Don't try and use the fact that your father fought fucking World War II to justify your stupid bigotry. We've all had relatives who served in the military. We all have friends and family who are fucking deployed overseas now. Don't fucking wave the flag and try and justify your bullshit. Fuck you. Now for the last video, which came out this morning. Right/left BS. He says it's up or down, not right or left. AKA, if you're right-wing, if you're a conservative, you want the country to go up. If you are a liberal, you want the country to go down and be destroyed. He's tired of liberals fucking up the country, so he has a master plan, a 4-point plan. 1. Children are too important to abandon to the left, so conservatives need to take over the school board. I assume he wants stuff like ID taught in schools, because he says he believes everything in the Bible. 2. We need to put God back in the U.S. government and schools because it has been the foundation for all of our laws. All of our laws are founded on that, including the First Amendment, which bans God being in the governments and God being in the government and God being in the schools. Just the same. Then he says these outrageous leftist accusations have gone on for too long. You know, that the Tea Party, they're not racist hate mongers. And they don't suffer from phobias because, you know, they hate immorality like gay, you know, and they don't like gay people. And, you know, even though that Wild Bill here has insinuated that homosexuals are child molesters and that liberals approve of it and that, you know, we should profile all Middle Eastern men because they're probably terrorists and that all Muslims are traitors and that all liberals were traitors. And then he says that every bad politician should be voted out. Wow, great. That's a novel concept, voting out bad politicians. Basically, his plan is to make everyone think like him and follow the same God as him. Which is wonderful coming from some guy who spent 53 videos complaining about liberals and Muslims trying to make everyone think like they do. So I have now summed up all 53 videos and attacked all 53 videos that Wild Bill has done. What have I learned through this process? The first thing I've learned is I'm never going to suggest this again. When I suggested this to the Skeptical Heretic, Coughlin, and a few others, they thought it was a great idea. A few people, like DPR Jones, told me I was insane. And after going through all 53 of these videos, I think I am insane. And I hate so much right now. I just really think this guy is a fucking travesty. And this is really just now, this is just par for the course with the Tea Party is. I mean, this is the sort of person that is a conservative Republican today. This is the sort of person that is not infested. The Tea Party was always kind of shitty, but this is the type of person who's in the Tea Party. You know, they try and say they're inclusive. They try and bitch about, you know, American values, when really they just want to oppress people and force their religious law on everyone else. They're just a bunch of, for the most part, just a bunch of bigoted douchebags. I mean, this guy's just a fucking social conservative who thinks that liberals are traitors. You know, great. You know, he doesn't really present any facts. He never presents any sources. He even says that he doesn't like numbers, and they just need to shut up about numbers because they just make them up anyways, even though he makes up fucking statistics on the fly. Anyways, I hope this has at least been entertaining or informative. This guy is a huge fucking asshole. I'm pretty sure that the people who knew about this video expected a lot more yelling. Unfortunately, it is really late now. It's almost, you know, midnight. The time I'm done. It's like 11:10 or something, and I have old neighbors, and they probably wouldn't like me screaming at the top of my lungs. And also, too, I'm pretty sure most of you can tell, and my voice is starting to give, because I've been talking for I don't know how long now. I never want to do this again. Seriously, I've been so angry. Like, I've just been fucking freaking out about all the stupid shit this guy has said. My notes are like 30 pages long. I have 30 pages of notes on this fucking asshole from all his videos. For those of you who've actually watched this entire video, thank you. I'm sorry I've wasted your time. If it's any consolation, I have wasted far more of my own on this asshole. In conclusion, really, Wild Bill, go fuck yourself. You're a bigot. You are a racist. You're uneducated. You're hypocritical, and you're a douchebag. The things you want would destroy this country and bring it down. I'm fine with people who are conservative. Quite a bit of my friends are conservative. I have a lot of conservative ideas too. But calling all liberals traitors, go fuck yourself, dude. And don't fucking wave the American flag at people. This has been Federalist Films. Hopefully really poning a douchebag. Later, everyone.